Hello everyone, back to today's second video. Really late with today's second video. I've been hanging around waiting for the very latest update of the GFS model, the midday run of the GFS. It has come through, it's hot off the press. I'm going to show you what it's showing in a second. I said we'd do a second video today looking at the cold snap, cold spell that might be setting up for the second half of November. Just say about today's first video with JMA Friday, as always on a Friday, having a detailed look at the weather for the month ahead with Japanese, and this time with the Beijing Climate Centre models as well. So I'm going to talk you through the latest on the cold spell. The cold snap had a bit of a wobble with some of the model output this morning. We'll see what the GFS and ECMWF models are showing right now. Just going to start with the Arctic Oscillation observed and forecast chart. The black line here tells us where we've been with the Arctic Oscillation. The red line's at the end where the GFS stumbles forecasting the Arctic Oscillation to go. Remember, this is just an index that's reflecting the state of the atmosphere over the North Pole. It's not driving anything. Just tells you what the atmosphere is doing. So right now we are positive with the AO. We're in positive Arctic Oscillation condition, but you can see that the GFS ensemble is very much trending the Arctic Oscillation down into really negative territory. That is a bit of a plunge. It's a bit of a collapse. It's going right way down to this sort of level on the scale, -4, -5. And that's telling us that the GFS ensembles want to build high pressure very strongly up over the pole. They want to bring a blocking feature over the pole and have high pressure up in the polar regions. And we've been seeing the evidence of this on the model output over recent days, because the model output has been very much going for blocking to be a feature over pole. But it has been chopping and changing a lot. I think one of the reasons it's been chopping and changing quite a lot is what's happening in the stratosphere. That's the level of the atmosphere, one of the top levels of the atmosphere above the troposphere. Troposphere is where weather is taking place. And this is at 10 HPA. This is from the JMA. It shows us the current temperature at 10 HPA, which is, again, one of the top levels of the atmosphere over the North Pole. The black line here shows that we are around average for the time of year at 10 HPA in the stratosphere. The grey line is the trend. So we are around where we should be, but of course that's going to be quite cold because it is a pretty cold time of year, to say the least. At 10 HPA, if you have a look at 30 HPA, you can see that actually we're a little bit colder than average, a little bit colder than the trend line, the grey line, for the time of the year. So that's quite unusual to have the relatively cold temperatures in the stratosphere like that. It's quite unusual to get that with such a strong feature for quite intense northern blocking, such as we see on the AO observed and forecast chart from NOAA just there. And I think that is explaining some of the model confusion, the chopping and changing that's going on with the model output at the moment. The other thing that explains it is getting the area of high pressure up over the pole, which is quite unusual anyway. And when that happens, when you get high pressure over the pole at this time of year, you'll find model reliability tends to do a bit of a plunge. Talking about the stratosphere, these are the stratospheric temperatures at 10 HPA from the GFS model. Again, this is hot off the press. This is for 18th November. You see quite cold, round average, really quite cold stratospheric temperatures. And the forecast actually is through to the extended range of the GFS model is to turn things even colder at 10 HPA in the stratosphere. That could be bad news for extending Arctic blocking out well into December. I think when the stratospheric temperatures at 10 HPA start to get that cold, get to that level of cold, so that's going to be quite hard to sustain a significant blocking feature. So it may be getting to December and we find the polar vortex re-strengthening. That is quite speculative. I said I'd talk you through the very latest run of the GFS. So this is the midday run of the GFS, and it's just updated. It's hot off the presses. This is for Tuesday, when we find we've got high pressure to our south, low pressure to the north, relatively mild after a cold snap at the weekend, start of next week, the middle of next week. will be milder. But through to the end of next week, a cold front is moving in from the Atlantic, turning the winds into the northwest. High pressure beginning to ridge in the Atlantic. And look at this, get through to next weekend, 18th, 19th of November. We're setting up a cold northerly wind. We're building up the ridge to our west, sending it up to the north, but blocking over the pole. Probably not as impressive as it has been in earlier runs. Some of that could be down to those cold temperatures in the stratosphere, but nevertheless it's enough to get the wind into the north. And then this run of the GFS, latest run hot off the press, moves the high pressure way to the north up towards Scandinavia. And by day 10, or just a little bit beyond day 10, we've actually got quite a big blocking feature there, setting up from Iceland over towards Scandinavia. Low pressures underneath it. We're bringing in a cold east-northeasterly wind. And that looks pretty wintry, I have to say, as we're going into the final week to 10 days of November. That's the very latest GFS. And as I say, this morning the GFS was wobbling a little bit on this colder weather, but I'm sure that will be cheering people up quite a bit this evening. And then finally, the ECMWF. This is the midnight run. The ECM won't be updating for around another couple of hours. So this is how things are looking with the midnight run of the ECMWF. Bring low pressure in through the second half of next week, turning increasingly unsettled in the second half of next week, and starting to turn colder as well. We're heading up towards day 10, which is Monday 20th of November, when we find we've got quite a nice blocking feature up to the north, low pressure to the east, and the winds are going into the north rather like that. So it is still more or less on course to be turning things colder for the final week to 10 days of November. I'd say what's happening in the stratosphere is a little bit at odds and goes a little bit against this signal for blocking over the Arctic. So how extensive this cold weather is, how severe it gets, I think that's open to quite a bit of doubt, with temperatures in the stratosphere over the pole being around no better than average, actually a little bit colder than average in terms of 30 HPA. So I think we may have to tone our ideas down a little bit from a repeat of the December to remember in 2010, for example. I'll be surprised, wouldn't rule it out, but be surprised if we was to get to that level of cold. But it does look like we are in for some quite cold weather starting next weekend and then possibly extending into the final week to 10 days of November. As ever, we'll be keeping you posted at GavsWeathers in the coming days. Tomorrow we've got the weekend forecast coming up. On Sunday we've got the 10th, we're up to the 10th winter update, as well as another Christmas update. I'm sure there'll be an update somewhere along the line over the weekend as well, either a video or a blog post talking about the chance of cold weather for the last stages of November. So keep checking back over the weekend for all the updates. But that's all for now, and thanks for watching.